out of your schedules today to meet with us, and we appreciate everyone else in the room as well. We know we have a number of staff. I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing, and then I'll tell you what we've been doing, and then tell you about a little bit about how the next couple hours will go. First of all, thank you to the Blue Zones Project in Iowa Healthways and Wellmark. I think two of you met the representative of Wellmark that's here. And they have sponsored Dan Burden to be here with us today, and so we very much appreciate that from them. We were excited last night to have Dan Burden, who was also here yesterday for the Trees Forever Symposium. So we're a sponsor, a City of Cedar Rapids is a sponsor of the Trees Forever Symposium, so we're glad to have Dan talk to a couple hundred people yesterday with that program. And then we grabbed him really quickly at the end of that day, took him for a tour both last night and this morning of some of our street projects, our city projects. So Dan actually got to see some of what you're looking at. Might need a little prompt from our staff about which one was which, but he was able to meet with our staff and get some firsthand knowledge of what we're doing out on the ground. Last night we hosted a community event at CSPS. Thank you to a couple of you that were able to attend. We appreciate that. About 50 citizens were there last night and had great questions. Nick, how many invitations we mailed? A few hundred at least. 1,100 invitations. So the other message was that we got some messaging out to 1,100 citizens who've been impacted by our recent streets projects, and personally invited them. Although I was mentioning that a couple of people I asked if they were from an invitation from a letter, they said, no, I read it in the paper and came as a result of that. So we did some pretty good outreach, which I want to thank Evelyn Eula for. So she's been working with our staff over the last couple of months to put these couple of days together. We appreciate that. This morning we had the really unique opportunity to do a staff meeting with Dan. From 9 to 11, we had about 50 engineers in this room, which is a great environment. I'll tell you, people, both our city staff, as well as a lot of the consulting engineers that do our design work. And we had a really robust discussion where we heard from everyone, which was a great technique that Dan used to go around the room and hear from every person that was here that was taking time out of their schedules to meet with us and get aligned, hear some new information, and then we'll have some more outreach as a result of that interest level. So we were excited to see that level of engagement, and boy, a lot of passion in the room, and a lot of inquisitiveness. You know, they're faced with that same thing that you are, that frontline citizens talking to them about how is this impacting me, and so they had some really, really great questions that we'll continue to work with them to answer for several months and years. And that leads to today. So this session with you, and we wanted this to be the end because we wanted Dan to have lots of experience with the community before we started here today, and then you'll work with a lot of our staff as well. Our plan for today is I'm going to turn it over to Dan. Dan's going to do a little bit of something with you, and then they'll start working together with Jen Winter and Jen with Jen's staff, and eventually you'll work with the papers that are in front of you. So we want this to be interactive. We want you to get as much information from us as you can, but also tell us as much as you can. So that's our goal for this morning. And with that, I should introduce Dan Burden. I think some of you have met Dan before. He's been here a few different times. He's affiliated with the Blue Zones Project, the Director of Innovation and Inspiration. How about that? See, we all need a title like that. For the Blue Zones Project, has tons of accolades, worked with more than 3,500 cities across the country, more than 30-some years in the business. Yep. And I keep thinking you started out some 30-some years ago with Brandon White's title, our the NPO, Brandon. So Brandon, big thanks for him, We appreciate very much the experience you give, and a view into the rest of what the country's doing, and I think what you'll hear from Dan is that we're right there in the front of the pack, and so we're excited to be there, but that's a scary place to be, so we want to learn as much as we can from others, so we don't make mistakes that we can actually learn from them. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dan.
Great. Thanks, Sandy, and Mayor and members of the council. I am always wanting to set very high expectations for all of the communities I work in. You've exceeded them in so many amazing ways. So what I've been able to experience yesterday and today is wonderful validation that once you focus on a target and know what you want to accomplish, it just unrolls in a most amazing way. The amount of money that you've now got dedicated for the next 10 years, that's going to call for a lot of change that you're willing to take on. And so when we get to it in my presentation, I'd love to give you some what I think are the better techniques people have used in other places and what challenges you already are facing and some that you may not know you're going to face. But I want to give you the highest praise for so totally exceeding any kind of expectations for an ordinary project. This is superb. With that, I think it would be helpful as I frame what I talk about a little bit later by knowing what each of you would like to get out of the presentation today. And since I don't know all your names, if you'd also introduce yourselves, and maybe we start with you.
Susie Wynock, and I'm interested in hearing you. I heard you a long time ago when we actually got Blue Sun started, and I've been on that advisory board. So I'm just interested in the updates and maybe anything new that you have.
Okay.
Implementing our complete streets in a way that's equitable.
Excellent. I'm glad you used that word because that's one of my keys is to make sure we've given everyone the lift, not just those who happen to live in the right place. Yep.
I'm Chris Schulich. Have also seen your presentation when you were here, whenever that was, several years ago. It seems like now, but it might not have been that long. I think I'm looking forward to seeing, I see a couple of case studies that we have here on, and they're specifically ones in my district that people have asked me about.
Good.
So I'm really curious as to see and learn a little bit more about how you manage the expectations of people, both from the city standpoint as well as the resident standpoint.
Excellent. Thank you. Mayor?
Ron Corbett, Mayor. Two things I'm interested in. One is how we make sure that this doesn't become a flavor of the month concept, that we're looking for the long-term for the community. And then two, how you have flexibility in the policy and you have a comprehensive view of what needs to be done, but when it gets down to a practical level, there may be some areas where the policy needs to show some flexibility so it doesn't become a one-size-fits-all and we go forward and crash through the wall no matter what.
Good.
So
Good. But I think that's the power of Complete Streets properly done. It's meant to be incredibly flexible. It's sensitive totally to the context of the neighborhood, the conditions, even down to the demographics and things like that. Yeah. Sir?
I'm Justin Shields. I'm on the City Council, District 5 representative, and to say that I'm one of the slower ones to buy into this concept is probably putting it pretty mild. I've never really bought into the concept.
Sure.
I'm certainly not there today yet.
Yeah.
So I'm here to listen. I hope you can convince me I'm crazy as hell. I'm not jumping in with both feet, but I'm not there yet.
Well, thank you for your candor, and I want you to feel comfortable with what the needs are and what the future might bring and everything. Thank you. Yes.
I'm Pat Shea on the City Council. I saw your presentation last night, and I guess I'm interested in seeing some of the theoretical things put into practice to see real-life applications, but I'm also interested in how we engage people, because how many times we all heard, well, we don't need a sidewalk because nobody walks there, and then they put a sidewalk in, and so
Everybody walks there.
how do we sell the general, every week there's a letter to the editor that's, just doesn't really understand some of the facts, and so it's an easy thing to demagogue. So really, how do we continue to sell this and show, and have some successes so that people see how this works to the benefit of all?
Excellent. Well, it's one project at a time and building that social capital. Talk about that more. Yes, sir.
I'm Scott Olson, and I have the privilege of chairing the Infrastructure Committee, which is the committee that sees these projects before they go to the City Council. And again, as an architect, I I know there's lots of different things that occur, as you look to projects, and every project is different. And the biggest part is the misconception that I think Pat talked about, is that it's one drawing that fits all. And we started out in some of the public hearings where there was just a generic drawing of a street with trees and and of course it didn't fit the neighborhood, and of course they felt that this is what they were going to get, whether they wanted it or not. So it is that very same thing. It's how do you educate, what is a complicated process, but yet how do people feel comfortable that it's adapted to each neighborhood. Each one is different, and there's older neighborhoods, younger neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And as I was out, it's also different demographics has an impact of whether they like this or not. And, I was out in my district, I'm District 4, which is southwest, northwest. A lot of people in the newer neighborhoods are asking, I want the sidewalks, I want the trees, put them in, get them in as fast as possible. You go into older neighborhoods, and they don't think anybody's going to use the sidewalks, and they have to shovel them, and they're going to potentially lose trees. And so you have this dichotomy of how do you implement this project when you have a variety of neighborhoods like we do in Cedar Rapids. And I think that the example I use, I had a chance to attend the APA conference in April in Atlanta, and there was a series of seminars that I attended, and I think Jennifer Pratt was with me, that showed the before and after of a lot of cities around the country where this policy has been implemented, and how it's brought back a lot of areas to life. And so, I think there's potential there, and we just need to get through and make this a long-term commitment so that we can start seeing examples of, what can happen if it's done right and done fairly. And so I'm pretty excited about, getting into some of these examples of what you've seen out there after you've had a chance now to tour the city and look at some of the different neighborhoods.
Yes, thank you for being so eloquent and touching on all the key points. Yes, sir.
I'm Scott Overland, Councilman-elect, and I would echo a lot of what's already been said, but I think what I'm most interested in is learning why certain things are recommended to do.
Okay.
But at the same time, I think the flexibility feature, and as we're rebuilding the street, we get the neighbors together, we help to educate them, and come to a conclusion that pretty much everybody can live with that's best for that community, rather than just say, we're going to ram a sidewalk in here, or whatever it might be. I think that way we can try to get the end result with ruffling as few feathers as possible.
Excellent. And by the way, I'm so glad each of you are drawing the distinction between technically knowing what will work and why it would work and work with the complexity of that neighborhood, but then the process of how do you get to where people own the idea. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. And yes.
I'm Ralph Russell. I've been on the council 2 years. I'm a retired civil engineer, worked with cities as a consultant for 45 years, so I've seen a lot of these types of things. I'm a strong supporter of this policy, particularly in the core area of our city. I mean, I can really visualize what our city and our neighborhoods will look like in our central business district, in Newbo, in Chet Village, in Kingston Village, in Ellis, and a number of these places that we've already got a start on walkability. We know how to handle our transportation. What I'd like to learn today is how we apply this policy to some of our outlying neighborhoods where there's a commercial area established that's been there for 40 to 80 years now. In some cases, we have an arterial street or a U.S. highway or a state highway going right through the middle of this commercial area, and the purpose is to move traffic. And we've done a very good job designing streets that move traffic through these neighborhoods, but we haven't done anything to encourage them to stop in that neighborhood, spend time. The restaurants are gone from those neighborhoods, and it's a challenge working with our DOT, our state DOT. I'd like to learn how other states have maybe been able to do a better job of doing that than we have in order to, in reference to applying this policy. I think we probably need to adopt a policy, some modifications to our policy that kind of fit these non-core city neighborhoods where it is important to move the traffic through an arterial street and still get along with the DOT. We don't have any or higher density housing in those neighborhood outlying commercial areas or around them, like we will be able to develop here in the ones I mentioned closer in. So I think that's the things I'd like to learn today.
Well, great. This is all where I was hoping we would be able to pick out the topics and so on. And I will give a little bit of a presentation in a moment, but we're going to ask our Public Works Director, Jen, if you would launch. But I do want to say something right at the very start. I've gotten to know, first from the session we just did, it was 2 hours in length, and we had one of the largest groups of engineers and people who bring the change together of any audience I've ever addressed. I mean, it was really amazing. I always watch body language, and I always pay attention to how people actually feel about what they're learning, the questions they ask, and so on. And I want to pay the highest possible compliments to your staff, to the quality of the people who are here as consultants, and their commitment. They are almost universally or uniformly seeing the future and wanting to know the answers, and knowing that there are no real solid answers today, but there are procedures that you're following, and that the commitment is there by the council, by all the energies of the city to make this go forward. I am just very impressed from everyone I've met. You've got great talent. So many compliments on that. And with that, is it all right if I turn the floor over to you, Jen? Yep.